Well, expectations are being built around the budget, and its presentation is not too far away. But what is closer than the budget is the first GST Council meet. And this is the first GST Council meet under Modi 3.0. What will be on the agenda? From sources, we understand, and there is no clarity, but this is source-based information. Fertilizers, that would be on the agenda. Tobacco, insurance premium as well. So some kind of rationalization of the tax slabs. Also, a kind of easing of the system as it works, since we have a complex structure. Will that happen or not? Will diesel and petrol be brought under the GST regime? And what is the need for this at this time? What should we be expecting from this GST Council meeting that's taking place on the 22nd of June? Let's discuss this. Abhishek Rastogi is the founder of Rastogi, and Mr. Bipin Sapra is also joining us. He's a tax partner at EY India. Thank you both, gentlemen, for joining us on the show. Mr. Rastogi, to you first. The GST revenues for the government, they have been satisfactory, to say the least. Now, this revival of the plan to rationalize the slabs in what we have, which is a complex tax structure that we are hoping will get eased out. How would you summarize the need for making our GST structure easier, and what are your expectations on that count?
I think now we have robust framework of GST, so as to say.
Yes.
And also a lot of statutory framework has settled down in light of various constitutional amendments leading to the constitutional challenges and to the statutory challenges. What industry today is looking forward is less of litigation, at least as far as classification and rate is concerned. And to attain that objective, I think the rate rationalization has been on the cards. But with this GST Council coming up, the industry's expectation is very clear that the twin object of reducing litigation and rate rationalization both comes in favor of industry, so that a lot of these disputes are reduced. A lot of these credits which have been today blocked and are leading to either tax cascading or inflationary pressure as far as the prices are concerned, these get resolved as well. So I think from that perspective, this is the right time when GST Council must provide for a forward-looking announcements for the next 2 to 3 years.
Let me take this across to Mr. Sapra as well. When you look at the inverted tax structure that we have, this duty structure, it has been plaguing certain sectors. In the kind of advisories that you do, you would get an understanding of how much this is affecting industry. Can you give us a sense of the need to be able to rationalize this and to be able to get an easier system in place, Mr. Sapra?
I'm sorry, the connection was not so good.
I was talking about Mr. Sapra. Can you hear me now? Is this better?
Yeah, I can hear you.
So I was just asking you about the inverted duty structure and the need by industry to be able, because I know it affects sectors like textiles and footwear and fertilizers the most. But when you are advising the industry, tell us what are the problems that they face and how much this need is there to kind of get an easier structure in place.
See, inverted duty structure has been an issue facing, which a lot of industries are facing. Via textiles and footwear alone, there are fertilizers, there's edible oil. A lot of these industries have been facing issues in the inverted duty structure. Couple of points, there are certain restrictions and disputes which are being created around the refunds which can be granted, which is causing basically for the cost to add up. Second, services, which is a huge, and which is one of the bigger causes of the credit getting accumulated. The refunds of that that credit is not available. So the entire inverted duty structure needs to look at goods and services together to be able to give out the refunds which are due. You have to imagine that a huge amount of credit which is out there in case of inverted duty structure is locked up in these credit refunds and other things which are pending out there.
Right.
And if given out, would really benefit the industry.
What about petrol and diesel? What are the chances, Mr. Rastogi, that you see that getting brought under the GST regime this time? And if it does, how do you see the input tax credit helping industry if that were to happen?
See, I think the most important point is that at least the discussions have now started on a positive note that there need to be some inclusion under the GST. Possibly that may not happen with all five products, or that may not get extended to ATF that easily, because there will be some number crunching which needs to be done. There will be certain states which may not be at an advantage if this happens. But I think looking the overall picture, looking the GST framework, if that can be addressed, I mean, the revenue loss to certain states could be addressed. I think it will be a good beginning, a step forward towards an inclusive GST, which also would mean that we would broaden the base as far as the GST and the products under GST is concerned. So I think it may not extend, or the discussion or the announcements may not, in the short run, extend to all five products, but possibly gas will be one item which would be discussed, debated, and deliberated for sure.
All of it will not happen at one go, but the need of industry is there, and broadening the base, like Mr. Rastogi is pointing out, that's an important piece. Do tell us, from your perspective, Mr. Sapra, on fertilizers. Currently, the GST slab it falls under is 5%. The government has started off the third term with an effort to cater to farmers and their needs. Do you see doing away with GST on fertilizers a possibility? Because that's clearly what the fertilizer industry has been asking for.
See, one of the major impacts which the fertilizer industry is facing is that a lot of credit is getting accumulated out there. And as we were talking about inverted duty structures, a lot of amount which is paid on the input side, they are not able to utilize it and get a refund. The current law, while it allows for these refunds, there are disputes which are being created. But getting fertilizer out of the GST net, we need to really take care of the entire industry, because it will really bring down the prices if it can be brought down to a nil rate. And that would help the farmers, obviously, this as this gets passed on to the farmers.
So this kind of relaxation, this kind of relief, depending on the sectors and their needs, Mr. Rastogi, I'm hearing from sources as well that there could be some relaxation on aircraft parts. My colleague has been bringing us that news as well. Do you see some of this coming through when you look at the needs of certain sectors, like in aviation, like in the farm sector that we are talking about, specifically tackling their needs and what the political need as well is after Modi 3.0 has come to power?
No, I think, to be very fair to the GST Council, their endeavor would be to, keep all the members in synchronization. I think that will be the key. They would not want to start at the wrong footing right from the first GST Council meeting of Modi 3.0 government. I think that should not be the endeavor of anyone. But what will happen is that there will be certain key sectors which will be identified. There will also be, according to me, what I feel is that there will be certain controversial issues where the executive action has been myopic and industry is struggling. For instance, double benefit, which, the executive action feels that the exporters have taken double benefits with respect to advance authorization licenses, and Rule 9610 has led to thousands of petitions in the country. So I think the GST Council will have, of course, a twin-pronged approach here. One would be to reduce litigation on these controversial issues where a myopic view has been taken and there are several pending litigation across the courts. Second would be to identify certain sectors, and these sectors must get the relief in an appropriate and pragmatic way. So, for instance, if you make fertilizers exempt, it is not necessary that the cost of the product would reduce, because there will be tax cascading. And as Mr. Sapra said, that there will be inputs which will now become the cost. So possibly the solution is not to make 5% to an exempt, but possibly get some of these products which are under 12%, under 5%, and in a situation where there is no inverted duty structure being applicable in those supplies. So I think the GST Council will have to do the number crunching very well. And that's where the key lies. If the number crunching is good, the sectors are identified, then there will be a natural boost to these sectors and the economy will get, a natural boost. So, for instance, in case of road construction, these concessionaire agreements, there is a huge dispute over, 12% and 18%, in spite of the circular being issued by CBIC. I think those are some of these expected issues which this GST Council is likely to address, which will bring a lot of tax certainty at this stage, which is very, very relevant for industry.
Let me get in a perspective from Badri Narayanan. He's joining us on this discussion. He's the executive partner at Lakshmikumaran and Sridharan Attorneys. Great to have you with us as well, Mr. Badri Narayanan. Do tell us this need for reducing the litigation activity that we are seeing connected with GST. Where are you seeing it at its heightened? And now to be able to address some of these issues where we can control the litigation, where is the maximum possibility that you see happening immediately? We have a GST Council meet tomorrow.
No, I think, like I said, there is the one thing good about this GST Council has been to reduce the litigation and to try and resolve things prior to it going into picture. The advanced ruling was set up keeping this in mind, but like some of my colleagues would agree, it's not functioned in a very, very well way. But the GST Council has been quite progressive in looking at this. So where are some of the issues which are there? Today, many industries where there is an inverted duty structure or there's an exemption, or for example, there is a difference of interpretation between the department and the taxpayer, they're all areas where there's been a litigation. And GST litigation, the amounts are much, much higher than the litigation which were there previously in the early regimes of excise, service tax, VAT, and others. So it's very, very useful for people to be able to do that. Few areas where I think we are probably going to see this litigation, which has kind of caused a lot of issues. Those have been in the areas such as online gaming, areas such as insurance, areas such as food products. Fertilizer has had inverted duty structure, which has caused some issues. So also pharmaceuticals. So rate rationalization, figuring out how we can come up with situations by which these can be addressed, will go a long way in reducing the issues coming from the department and the litigation in these regards.
Narayanan has correctly pointed out one sector where there has been a real clamor from the industry. We are talking about online games, horse racing and casinos. Mr. Sapra, this 28% levy has caused all of that and has put the industry in a fix. Do you see the case over there for a review, and do you think it will be done?
So my understanding of this industry is that this industry has had a negative impact on account of this 28% on the full amount of the deposit being implemented. And it's more than what the service fee normally earned by the online games portal. These skill-based games which are being played today, before October 2023, the tax was at 18% of the platform fee, while now it is at 28% of the entire deposit which a player plays. So the cost of the tax has gone up for the online games portals. And the GST Council, when it was implementing this act, had promised that this will get reviewed in 6 months. And because of the elections coming in and no GST committee being held, this will now be taken up either in this meeting or in the next. And the industry has been representing quite strongly that there has been a strong negative impact on them. So yes. I see a good case for the review out there.
Well, so that's what we are talking about, that some sectors are going to be politically very sensitive, like the farm sector that we were talking about, Mr. Rastogi. There are other sectors like this where commercial interests are high, and it's beneficial for the government as well. So when you consider sectors like insurance for one, and that's where we are hearing that the industry is urging for lower GST on premium, is there a case for it? And how do you kind of pick and choose in this kind of environment that we have, where different sectors have different needs, but in terms of government revenues, GST revenues, we need to kind of keep that momentum going?
So I think insurance is a big sector as far as revenue augmentation is concerned, and it brings a large amount of GST collection, to the central and the state governments. So I think, but at the same time, the objective has been of this government in both of these terms to encourage insurance policies. But because of several incentives even under direct taxes, which have gone against the insurance sector, these insurance policies are today not very liked by the consumers. And also, it is coupled by the fact that there is 18% premium on these most of these policies, which makes it very, very costly, for various sectors and income ranges. So I think insurance sector is rightly asking for that reduction. It may not come though. I personally feel insurance sector will not go to 12%. The rate rationalization has to happen to bring, a little benefit to the insurance sector. Similarly, when we talk about the online gaming, and it's, debated all throughout, today what is most important is the valuation part of the gaming sector is addressed. We've been talking about 18% versus 28%. I think industry is absolutely fine to pay 28% till the time the issue of valuation is addressed. And I think for all sectors, as far as litigation is concerned, and this is what we expect this time from the GST Council by way of an announcement, is the reduction with respect to the pre-deposit when the matter goes to the tribunal. So this pre-deposit is a mandatory amount which needs to be deposited by the taxpayer for filing an appeal. And we hope and expect, and we understand that there are a lot of debates which are going on this issue, that the pre-deposit rate for filing an appeal, especially before the tribunal, will come down. And with the formation of the new tribunals across country, there will be a lot of litigation which will go to the tribunal level. And if this pre-deposit amount is reduced, then I think industry will get a very, very good breather at this stage.
Let me also ask Mr. Badri Narayanan, as far as, the kind of backlog that we are seeing in litigation, if an amnesty scheme could be prioritized, do you see that happening? The need for it? Do you see that?
So I think two things, Vikram, I think we need to keep in mind. One is today, for example, in order to settle a case, we have very few opportunities and avenues under the current GST law. Under both excise and service tax, there used to be provisions which allowed where there is a difference of opinion between the industry and the department, that there could be an amendment or a notification for waiver of this if it's on a fair basis. This the department, the assessees have taken a position based on a fair reading of the law, interpretative, and they've all taken a consistent stand. That provision is not there in GST. It's probably a miss. And one of the discussions is happening, at least with the department, is to bring in this kind of a situation where some kind of an amnesty, I won't say an amnesty, some kind of a relief for in the industry for particular products or particular transactions or particular services can be there. I feel that's something that should be brought in regardless of the department's position on various things like fertilizer, insurance, or for that matter, online gaming and so on and so forth. That's one aspect I think we should bring in and fortify our GST law. With respect to general amnesty schemes, where, for example, litigations have gone very high, the tribunals today were set up to ensure that there are less number of these litigations. But I feel that in GST, at least there is going to be a bit of an explosion to start with before it kind of comes down. Regular amnesty schemes, probably every 10 years, 15 years, is probably something that the government will seriously see. And I think this government has the intent of not increasing the litigation, but of settling these cases. But the department is set up in such a way that there is an incentive to file and issue notices and to litigate rather than to take positions much earlier. And therefore, a combination of these things, some kind of a position by which the board is able to take a waiver or a relief at a particular industry level and at a broader economy, broader period level to be able to come up with amnesty scheme every 10, 15, 20 years is something that would be good for controlling the litigation in the long run.
And that needs to be at par with the kind of standards that exist in tax regimes in more developed economies. How much of that is in play? Because at the end of the day, you want a tax structure, Mr. Sapra, this is for you, where we're looking at a tax structure where compliance is not the most difficult and it helps in the ease of doing business and raises India's ranking on that count. How are we moving in that direction with the current GST regime, and what more needs to be done according to you?
I think it's a very pertinent question, and I think the government is also seized of the matter that ease of doing business is a high priority for them. From a GST perspective, there are a couple of things. Rate rationalization was something which we had talked about earlier. I think simple rate structure and lesser rate slabs would be one thing. That would reduce litigation. Ultimately, a lot of this is about interpretation of law and the litigation which has ensued. Especially in the last 1 year, we have seen huge amount of demands coming up on a lot of it on procedural matters. The compliance in the Indian GST has been online. It may be a little more tricky for some, but I think it's transparent. There is a lot of scope out there for people to just go and simplify their filings. What I think the Indian industry is looking for from the GST structure is a simplification of rates. The credit system has a lot of blockages out there because a lot of credits are not available. And these interpretations lead to further disputes.
Correct.
Given that there are multiple states out there and any big industry will have multiple registrations, multiple audits which are happening, multiple investigations which are getting raked up, all of these are adding to reducing the ease of doing business. So what the industry is looking at is that either you have centralized audits or a coordinated system of audits. Multiple people shouldn't be shouldn't be initiating investigations, and assessments should be simple so that most of the taxpayers want to be honest, pay up their dues, and not to get into any sort of litigation. I think
Yes.
that's the crux of a simple GST which India is looking for.
Well, how further we move in the next and subsequent GST Council meetings is going to be watched very closely. But at this point in time, we're considering all the factors at play with regard to several sectors like the farm sector, like insurance, how much of rationalization we can expect when it comes to the tax slabs. All of that is in play. And with Modi 3.0, this is going to be the first GST Council meeting, so it's going to be watched that much more closely. It's a pleasure having you with us, Abhishek Rastogi, Bipin Sapra and Mr. Badri Narayanan. Thank you very much for joining us with your perspective on the GST Council meeting and what we can expect on the agenda that's coming up tomorrow. Thanks.